Hello, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome aboard if you're new here, and welcome to another episode of Tribble's Workshop, where we go through how to do different things on SimplePlanes 2. And something that has been requested of me is a feature that I showed off on my test plane here on the last episode. So if you haven't seen that, I'd check it out. It's not too long, and it just goes over all the features of my little custom test plane I built here. But anyways, one of the features are these kind of disguised missile bays where they pop open and then you fire the missile from there. So it's sort of like helps with the stealth because you don't have the profile of the missiles hanging off the wings or the bottom of the fuselage or anything. So today we are going to go through how I built those. And if you see here, I'll just show you on this plane. We got one action group that pops up our IR missiles that attach this way and they fire forward out of here. And then we've got another one that opens a different way and then extends on pistons and then fires out of there. So we've got two different kinds and action groups that differentiate between the two. And then just another thing, I've got like buttons here in my cockpit that I've built in where you can switch between the weapons, open the bomb bays, switch targets, pretty much everything I can think of. I've just been adding to it. And this plane is available on the SimplePlanes website. You can download it. I'll put a link in the description or in the comments for you. So let's go ahead and we'll get into the builder and I'll show you how I made these. All right, so one of the things I just want to do while we're here, I'll show you how these bays function. So we're gonna get some enemies here. Let's get it. We'll start with our radar missiles. So we'll open those, they'll extend. We'll switch to our air-to-air mode. We got a guy here and fire. And they just launch, see, right out of the bay. And then we close it and bring our IR missiles up. Let's see, we got another plane here. Kind of far away though. Now, as you can see, the target is offset on the left a little bit. That means that we're firing the IR missile that is on the left side of the plane. All right, we are getting a lock, and then we'll fire these. You see those fire up out of the bay. So yep, that's kind of how those bays work. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and get into building now. So I will see you when we are there. All right, so we got my test plane that I just built here. Hopefully it flies. It should. I think I've gotten pretty decent at putting stuff together that it at least can take off. And this is what we're going to use to build our test bays in, so, or our actual deployment bays in. These aren't really tests anymore. So the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out where you want to put your bay at. And something to keep in mind is the shape of the fuselage. It's a lot easier to create the doors if the surface you're working with is flat. But you can use things like wings and stuff to make the doors as well. I just like using fuselage because it's easy to shape. So we're going to get our bay in. All right. And then we're just going to zero out the X on that to get it centered. And then we're going to need to get it, probably not that big. Let's say 2.5, get it positioned where we want it on the fuselage here. And now we'll adjust the width. Yeah, we'll go with 0.8. We'll leave it plenty big. Now, something I like to do on these, you can leave the corners rounded if you want, but I like to square them off. I think it looks a bit cleaner when you get the panel in there. And it's a bit easier to actually shape the panel itself. I'm just going to shrink this down so it's not in the way so much. There we go. All right. Looks good to me. Now we need to get our bay door done. So we're going to grab another piece of fuselage and we're just going to set it here for now. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at our dimensions on our cutout here. And you can see we've got 2.5 long and 0.8 wide. And we're going to do the same on here. So 0.8, or was it 0.8? Man, my brain is dead today. Yeah, 0.8. And then 2.5 on our length. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set our height to 0.01 to make it a thin door. You can make these as thick as you want. You can make them so they are the exact same thickness as your fuselage if you want. I might actually make those a bit thicker. Let's go with, what's 0.05 look like? Too much. We'll go with 0.02. All right, there we go. Now that we've got that shaped, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our coordinates for our bay again. So we're going to look at our Z coordinate, and we're just going to copy that and paste it into our panel here, and that'll move it up so it's in line with that. And then we are going to copy our Y and paste that in there, and that'll get it close. I messed up on my width a little bit. Let's fix that real quick before we get any further into it. There we go. All right, now see how we can't see it because it's inside the cutout. So what we want to do is we want to go to our cutout and go to our settings here and switch it to custom, click add, and just click the fuselage. And that way it only works on the fuselage. And I like using custom because if your cutout goes across multiple parts, you can add those parts individually, so it only affects those. So now that we got our door in there, looks pretty nice, I think. Now by default, this door is going to be attached to the fuselage, which isn't good. That will keep it from opening. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our little icon over here, our connections, and we're going to disconnect. Now, I'm going to go through this pretty quick, but I mean, you're smart. You can pause it if you need to, and I don't want to waste too much time with the shaping and stuff. All right, so our next part we're going to want to get is our hinge. So we're going to go into gizmos down here, and we're going to grab a hinge rotator, and then we're going to try and orient it the direction we want. There we go. We'll just stick it there for now. We'll adjust it. All right, so if the big blocky base is in the way, you can disable that. You can size the hinge down if you want so it fits a little bit better. We'll go with about, fine, 59%. It didn't want to do 60. All right, and then we're going to want to disconnect any connections in this as well. We're going to set those up manually. And then we'll just line the hinge up with the door kind of here. Make sure it's not clipping through the top. We're good. All right. Now we are going to connect. So we're going to add a connection. We're going to connect the back of the hinge to the fuselage of the plane. And then we're going to add another connection. We're going to connect the front of the hinge to our flap. There we go. Now I'm going to color the inside of this a little bit just so it's easier to see the difference between all these parts, all right? It's not going to be super pretty, but it'll be easier to tell what we're doing. All right, so now that we got those, what we want to do is we're going to take a look at our XML real quick. So we're going to look at our flap here, and if you don't have overload enabled, what you do is you go up into your settings here, under your game settings, and you scroll down until you see the overload XML editor here, and you enable that. And that'll give you access to the in-game XML editor. Keep in mind that I'm on the beta version of the game. I'm not sure if this has been pushed out to the normal branch yet. So if you don't see this, you might need to go into Steam and switch over to the beta branch if you want to use that. So we're going to go into our XML editor for our part here. And what we're going to do is we're going to want to go to disable aircraft collisions and set that to true and hit apply. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it so it doesn't catch on the parts of the fuselage or anything else while it's moving. And then we're going to do the same with the hinge as well. So we're going to set disable aircraft collisions to true on that because the hinge is going to be moving and we don't want the moving part of the hinge to impact with anything and get caught because that's going to cause problems. One of the biggest things to keep in mind when you're building these bays is to make sure to set your disable aircraft collisions to true on the hinge, on the door, and then if you're using a pylon, you'll want to set it on the pylon as well. All right, so we got our door, we got our hinge. So what we're going to do now is we're going to configure our hinge. So we're going to go over here. All right, so first off, we've got our size, how we want it, the range. We don't want it to open a full 90 degrees because that would open up flat. So we're going to go with, we'll say 25 degrees, and then we're going to want to slow it down some because otherwise it will open quite fast. All right, and next we will do the custom input. So you go down to your input here, go to custom input, delete what's in there. All right, so now we're going to tell the hinge what to do and how to do it. So we're going to start with putting the action group we're going to apply it to. So we're going to type activate, and I'm going to put it on activation group 2. And then we're going to put a question mark. So essentially what this is going to do is this is going to tell it to the hinge to not do anything and just wait until you activate the group. You know, it's going to make sure the group doesn't activate on its own when you load the plane in. So your flap, starts in a closed position. And then we are going to go and type smooth. And what that does is that's going to make it so your hinge is going to move essentially from, 90 degrees one way to 0 to 90 degrees the other way. And the way the game reads that is going to be with a -1 to 1. And that's the movement. -1 is all the way, say, left. And then 0 is top. And then 1 is all the way to the right. And what that does is it tells it to transition smoothly from one to the other instead of just snapping across so your door doesn't just, fly open. And then next we are going to put in a colon to separate it. And then we're going to type smooth 0, 1. And essentially what this is the other part of the or kind of statement. Now, bear with me. I don't know much about XML, so I'm just trying to explain this how I understand it. So essentially what this is doing is this is telling it that if the bay door is closed and you activate group 2, it'll open. If it's open and you press group 2, it'll close. So we're going to hit OK and save that. And then we'll go ahead and pop out here and test it. So we'll press 2. See how it's opening down. That's not what we want, right? So we'll go back into our building. And there are a couple different ways to fix this. You can do it either in the custom input, just by flipping these around, I believe. Let's see if that's right. Switch that around to 1 and 0. No, that's going to make it open automatically. Like I said, I'm still learning as well, so we're going to switch this back to 0 and 1. Maybe it was this expression. We're learning together, right? There we go. Nope, that's not it either. Okay, so we're going to go back to our initial input here. So this is something you can do to just try things out and figure out what works. So instead what I'll do is I'll just hit invert button here. Now that's the easy way to do it, is just to use the invert, but I like to learn about the XML and stuff too. So there we go. Now we can see that opens. That's a good amount, I think. And then we press the button again and it closes. Nice and smooth. Looks good. So we're going to go back into building here, and now we need to get it armed. So the next part is going to be attaching a pylon for our missile. So we're going to go up here. We're going to go to weapons. Scroll all the way down. We're going to grab a pylon. And then we're just going to stick it here. It's a bit big, so we'll size it down to, let's say 80%. There we go. Now you can adjust the detach force if you want. It makes it so whatever you're detaching, it pushes away harder. and the direction. Since these are going to be launching forward, we'll switch that to forward and see if that helps any. Now you also want to go into the XML for your pylon here, and you want to set disable aircraft collisions to true on this also. Otherwise it'll clip with stuff trying to go through, because the cutouts, as I've explained before in other episodes, when you put a cutout in a piece of fuselage, it's visual only. As far as the game's concerned, that piece is still physically there, so stuff can still collide with it. Now I'm just going to hide this piece of the fuselage here so we can see a little bit better while we build this. Scroll up here and we're going to grab an IR missile and attach it. That's a bit big, so what we can do is we can go in here and we can just adjust the size overall. That looks pretty good. Doesn't look like anything's clipping. And then we're going to set this to the same group as our door. That way when we open our door, it'll arm the missile. You don't have to do that. I just like to do it because I use a lot of different weapons at once, so it makes it easier for me to kind of separate what I'm doing with them, right? And kind of isolate them, and it makes it easier when I'm doing the cockpit stuff, which you've seen on the inside of my other jet. And you can change all this stuff with the missile. We're just going to leave that all by default for now. All right, now let's go here. And then we're going to open it. Oh, it's getting stuck. All right, 1 second. We'll go back into build. And now I'll troubleshoot why it's getting stuck. Now, why would this missile be getting stuck? It's because it's impacting with the fuselage. Because see, weapons and missiles are treated differently in this game than the fuselage pieces as far as their impact, because they need to be able to, hit other vehicles or the ground and stuff and impact with them differently. So the problem is that missiles impacting with our fuselage trying to come through. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our fuselage, go to our XML, and set disable aircraft collisions to true, and hit apply. And we'll go back out here and test it again. There we go. Now we've got our missile ready to go. So let's go ahead and give it a test here. We will just spawn in a random plane, and we'll see if this monstrosity I built real quick will fly. Let's get some flaps going here. And we're off. All right. Get this trimmed out, get our gear up. All right. It flies, that's nice. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to open our bay here, and then we're going to switch to air-to-air mode. Is that a plane or a boat? Looks a bit low to be a plane. But I think that might be the only one out here. Oh no, there we go, Hurricane. Keep in mind this is angled up, so your target's going to be up a little bit. As you can see, it's kind of pointing up some, because the missile itself is angled up. So when you're using this type of bay, you'll want to keep in mind that your missile's pointing up. You can always go into the missile itself and increase its viewing angle. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And how far away is this guy? Give me a second. Actually, I had this bound, but I can't remember if it came unbound or not. Yeah, it's bound to my... There we go. All right, we got a lock, and we launch. And it's a hit. And then we can just hit the button again, close our bay down, and there we go. Now you can build another type of bay where the weapon extends out of it with a piston instead of being attached to the door. So I'll show you how to do that real quick as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go in here. We're going to get rid of our missile and that and our hinge. All right. Nope. Didn't want to get rid of the door. Just the hinge. So we're going to just unlink that. You don't have to worry about this stuff. I'm just resetting it back to where we were. Okay, here we go. Now we've got our door cut out and we need to get a hinge on it. So this time we're going to attach the hinge to the side. You know, I must play a different game that's got different rotation buttons because I can never get those right. All right, so we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to disable the base, shrink it down a bit, kind of get it lined up where we want it. Let's get our Z position for the door here, and we will put it on the hinge as well so it's centered. Nope, we don't need that for there. All right, let's get this kind of positioned where we want it. Give it a bit of a twist just to make it look good. All right, and then we are going to go in and configure this one pretty much the same way. Same door opening mechanic as before. But this one, we'll go ahead and knock the speed down on that one. This one we're going to leave at a high percentage, 90, because we're going to be opening it sideways and we want it out of the way. All right, so now that we've got that, we need to get our connections done for this. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll get rid of any default ones. We'll connect the back to the fuselage. And then we'll connect the front to our flap. There we go. Make sure that's only connected to our hinge. That's good. All right. Now that that's done, let's check our XML for a door. Make sure that that is disable aircraft collision set to true. And we want to do the same for our hinge. True. And make sure our fuselage is also true, so our missile doesn't catch on it. All right, let's go ahead and give that a test and see how that works now. Quite well. We probably want to speed it up a little bit though. So let's go back in here. And that's a nice thing. You can just kind of test this stuff. Oh, we don't, not the size. We want speed. Let's go with 35, see how that looks. That's better. All right. So this one's going to be a bit more confusing to build. So you're going to have to pay a bit more attention, but we'll figure it out, so don't worry. So we got our door and everything set up, right? So next what we want to do is we want to get a piston. And we are going to put that in here. And we want those Z coordinates to be the same as the door. So that's in the middle. Let's go ahead and take a peek in here. All right. And then on top of this piston, now you can build a block around this to hide it if you want as well. We're just going to leave it open so you can see it. And on top of the piston, we are going to go to Weapons, scroll all the way down, and we're going to stick a pylon on top of the piston here, if we can get it to actually maybe a better angle. Where do you go? Okay, fine, I'll just delete you and make another one. Why you... I must be because I'm in inside. There we go. We'll just do it this way. It'll be easier to see. All right, grab our pylon. We're going to attach that to the top of our piston. That's big and ugly, so we're going to size that down. Now, you'll have to adjust the sizes for the piston and the travel for the piston depending on, your craft and how far it needs to move. So we're going to go to this, and we are going to do the XML for our piston as well. So disable aircraft collisions true. Same thing with our pylon here. Disable aircraft collisions true. Did I apply that? No, I didn't. True. You always want to make sure and click apply, otherwise it doesn't actually work. Let's make sure these are good also. Good also. All right. Next, we will configure, actually, no, you know what? Let's get our missile on there so we can size it up better. So we'll stick a missile on here. There we go. Oh, that pylon's facing backwards. I think. I don't know. I don't know if it makes a difference. All right, how's that missile look? Bit big. Let's shrink it down some. All right. That looks pretty good, actually. All right, so now we will go into our piston. So you can adjust the size to kind of make it bigger or smaller so it sort of fits where you want it. You can adjust, all of it, the radius, everything. So the speed, we'll slow that down a little bit. Range, we'll bump it all the way up to 75. If we need to increase it more, we can increase it in the XML, but then it starts to look a little wonky because the pieces come apart. So next we'll go to our input, go to custom input, delete that. Now we are going to do the same thing kind of in here, but a little bit different. So we're going to use the same smooth that'll make it so it opens smoothly instead of snapping. Or so the piston travels smoothly instead of snapping from closed to open. And then our group, and we'll use 2 again. All right, so here is our custom input for our piston. It's smooth, activate 2, so group, or activation group 2. I keep forgetting what it's called, sorry. The 1 here is just the speed modifier, so that's how fast it goes from open to close. And then what this part here does is this 0.9 is this checks, so since it's on the same activation group as the door, I press the 2 and that activates the activation group, right? So once that activation group's active, it starts opening the door. At the same time, on the piston, it starts a counter. So after it's been 0.9 of a second, it opens the door. So essentially, it's just telling it to wait just under a second before it extends the piston. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and give it a test. So we've got our plane here. We're going to hit group 2, doors opening, and missile extends. Now, obviously, you don't want to shoot yourself in the back like that. So what we'll do is we'll go in here to the missile and we'll give it lofting. So that'll make it go up on its own. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to, we don't want to do that. We want to rotate all of it. There we go. And we're going to give it some angle here. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Still a bit close, but we'll see. Let's give it a try and see how it works. All right, get this trimmed out. We'll get some stuff spawned in and give this a try. Spawn a couple in. All right, let's go ahead and open our bay up. Get our missile out. Switch to air. Okay, we got our targets this way. Now, obviously, you don't want to shoot at anything that's too far below you with a setup like this. You can also, set it up off to the sides or from the bottom of your plane. All right, we're getting a lock. And there we go, launch. Close our bay. So that's another way to build these extending bays. I obviously did a bomb bay in a previous video, so you can check that out if you'd like. And I think that pretty much covers it for these two. We've gone on for quite a bit. I don't want to make this too long. So if you like figuring out how to do stuff in SimplePlanes 2, think about giving me a sub. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything you want me to add to my list for the workshop how-to series. And until next time, take care, be safe, and I will see you later.